If you really think about it, that's a crazy thing to want to do and to want to put yourself through.
You are on the center stage, everyone's watching you. You get that small moment of spotlight.
What did you realize in your life that produced this change in orientation, and why do you think he was justified?
I'm gonna make it hard on you, right? That's my job.
You've kind of veered off the path. My presumption is that it wasn't enough to expand the full scope of your ambition.
I think you'll see a lot of people wearing different types of masks, like so many games being played all at once. You just get so mentally tired of that you no longer want to think that way anymore.
Why even take the risk to pursue this?
But that's what causes that bubble in a way. I feel like, a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, but it's literally the blind leading the blind.
How will you store the work that comprises most of your life?
Guess what? The pandemic happened and everything was pretty much done.
And even in those conditions, just out of sheer ingratitude, people would just break something just to see something happen. Why would somebody leave one of the most competitive career paths in the world, especially after just making it in? Peter Huang is a former Deloitte consultant. Now he's dipping his toes into, well, the uncertain and very new world of AI. And so we talk about his career and the instinct for adventure, including what it looks like to have an orientation that is even worthwhile and worthwhile of all the, let's say, inevitable suffering that you're going to experience in your life. And so, well, now that he's taken the leap, we talk about the consequences of leaving this corporate bubble and what it's like when you're in it. And so for all of my business, tech, or finance oriented listeners, I think you'll like this one. So join us. Peter, you've recently made a big jump, like a really big change in your career, I would say. And I would love to go into that. But first, why don't we just talk about you? And, we want to kind of situate you in the minds of our listeners. And so clue us in a bit. Tell us about who you are.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, first, before I start, of course, I want to thank you for inviting me in, in terms of this episode of your podcast and giving me the stage to be able to, give a voice out, maybe start some kind of topics of discussion with all the viewers in terms of what they want to do in their career, or maybe in the same page in terms of where they're going in their journey. So, why don't I get to just introduce a little bit about myself so people are up to date in terms of who I am and what I'm looking forward to. But yeah, my name is Peter. I am I would say still a recent grad out of university where I went to school at McMaster University, which is same as Tyler, where that's where we met. I went there for a commerce degree where I specialized in finance, and I did a minor in sustainability and information systems. Upon graduation, I joined Deloitte as a technologies consultant, where I did implementations, sustainment enhancements for ERP softwares, and a whole slew of other things. But after staying with Deloitte and then having a jump start in my career through consulting, I recently made a switch where I have entered the tech industry, joining Lyft to be working on process automations, and then hopefully we'll be now getting into the AI portion of AI automation. So that's going to be a really fun part that I'm looking forward to, just kind of building that up with my co-lead and also the rest of the team to see where we can bring that to Lyft.
So why did you in the first place get into this? I mean, you could say this whole industry of tech, business, consulting, even Deloitte. Why, it's certainly, Big Four has a reputation for, you could say overworking their, 60-hour work weeks, maybe 100-hour work weeks. Why? And that's not a secret, everybody, it's kind of the reputation they have. And that's crazy. Like if you really think about it, that's a crazy thing to want to do and to want to put yourself through, It takes a tremendous amount of work and loss of sleep and stress. So, that's a crazy idea. So why go for it?
Yeah. I think, Tyler, I'm going to tell you just straight up, I never even thought about going into consulting for, the entire time I was in school, in high school, in university. I never even cared about going into consulting because I was so tunnel visioned into wanting to go into banking, any part of the financial industry. But it's funny how fate has it because I never really got a chance to go into that. It has always been a dream, but somehow every time, when I do get, seems to like I'm getting a step into that, something happens and it pushes me right back to step one. Just like how in my end of my second year, I actually got a offer letter with BDC, Bank of Development of Canada, for venture capitalists, and yet, guess what? The pandemic happened, and everything was pretty much done, like gone, and out. So as much as like my hard work that I put in, I was so excited to start. Everything just pretty much sent me back to square one, and so. Um, as you can see through my journey, like I always wanted to be in finance, but never got that chance. But it was me wanting to continue always be better. Where in my internship year, school forced me to find a place to be able to work for 1 year. That's part of my program. Even though there was nothing open at the time, I just kept applying and applying, even to things that I would never want to go into. As a kid, I hated working with technology, anything related to computers or software. I was like, I would never touch. I pretty much sworn to that just because growing up, I remember times where I try to watch anime and cartoon on my computer. My parents would help set that up, but one episode of like 25 minutes would take me hours sitting there waiting for it to load. So I literally swore to myself very early on I would never touch things like technology, but somehow I was forced into that in terms of the pandemic, and I found an internship working at Toronto Hydro where it gave me the exposure to touch on automation, and so that part really changed kind of my perception of has things really changed where I need to start adapting and maybe look into what actually fits me now. Because even though as much as I thought I knew myself, I want to go into finance, I want to go into banking, maybe things have changed a lot over the last 5 to 10 years. And so with that, I just kept going, wanted to be the best as always. That's my standard of much as I can be. And during one time where I had dinner trying to catch up with my my former CSA president, he told me, he's like, hey, Peter, I just joined Deloitte and we are actually opening up a new team that sounds very familiar to what you're doing in terms of your internship right now. And he's like, maybe you should just keep an eye on it. I know you're not really interested in these things, but I know you're about to graduate soon as well. So just maybe keep an eye, see if you want to apply to it. And I just kept, I literally was watching their career page for nonstop, maybe like a month or 2 months. And I saw their first posting and I applied to two positions there, one of them being the one that I ended up going into after my graduation. But that's what made it so easy for me, where because I got the offer letter so early compared to all the other companies before they even posted their new grad programs, I didn't really have a hard choice in terms of choosing where to go. I was like, hey, I already have an offer, signed it right, I would say pretty much exactly 1 year before my graduation. So I just enjoyed my final year, and I just thought, hey, this is a great opportunity to give it a try, even though it was never something that was part of the plan. Even though like you mentioned, Tyler, there's long work hours, it's intense, but as someone that's 21, maybe I think it was 20 or 21, I was like, that sounds exciting. I want to be working alongside people who are relentless and who aren't just gonna say, "Hey, Peter, it's 5. Let's just leave it for tomorrow, maybe, or for next week. We just jump." My OCD would never let that work out, so that's why I love going into that environment upon graduation. So that's what put me into that. I would say if I ever go back to that decision, I would still say yes to it 100%. As hard as it is, as bad as some of the things that you will hear online about how the big four, the big three will work you in your early 20s, I would still take that offer any day. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, so you talked about two pretty interesting things that I want to ask you about. You kind of made a little side comment that you kind of believe in fate, and that things kind of fell into your hands, and you just rolled with it, right? And so there's this element of, okay, take things what you can get. But then you also mentioned, like, you have this pull, you could say, to be in an environment of people that are, let's say, go-getters, right? You make your own path for yourself, and you figure it out and you do it on your own. Where do you think that came from? Where, you previously, let's say you find a point where, you're trying to watch anime and you're just getting frustrated that, oh my God, like this technology is so slow and it's just not worth it. And so I'm going to give up on this. And that, you could say early on that almost repels you from tech, in that whole industry, which you ended up being in. And so where did this, I want to be the type of person, be in the environment of people that are go-getters. Where did that come from?
I think half of it definitely comes from, like mentioned earlier, my OCD, which is
Hmm.
probably made a lot worse because I know I have ADHD. It's just something that I never want to get tested on. But that portion of me that I was born with, the way that I'm wired, I don't like to sit on things, right? And it's always been like
Hmm.
just like me waiting for an episode to load when I was young, telling you about that story. I just can't wait. I need to get going. I need to see action. And that's what just slowly, I think, as I grew up, kind of became part of my personality. That I hate waiting for others to do it. Why don't I just put in the work and make that happen, right? So it's like the same with, going into work, right? There's a lot of things that are going to be on the table. A lot of times, maybe the team can kind of help each other out, pick up the some of the work that has been sitting there. But to me, I want to be with someone that's just like me, that's willing to like, hey, let's get this done. As soon as it lands on your table, we're gonna start working on it. So there's nothing that we're sitting on in the backlog or anything. Like we just go. That's why I think those two component like added together was like perfect in terms of like setting me up to wanting to go into places like consulting. Everyone's like it's very much like an alpha wanting to carve out their own path, and as much as that we respect each other in terms of the way we work. So you get people that are just constantly that are feeding off of each other's energy, and we just keep going. So that was definitely, I think, a point like I realized, hey, this is something that I probably can very much grow in terms of that space coming out of school. And it definitely fits the way that my brain has been wired. Yeah.
You mentioned you don't want to find out if you have ADHD. Is that OCD? Is that diagnosed, or kind of
So
a
it's
sneaky
not
suspicion?
Yeah, it's not me like not wanting to find out. Just I never cared too much to see it on paper. But I know for a fact. I think like just growing up, if you ever know me as like a kid, I would always be all over the place, touching things, wanting to disassemble things to understand how it works and everything. Like no one really could stop me. Like telling me like I just don't listen. I know that for a fact. I think even
Right.
nowadays I'm very much still a little bit like that because. You can say I'm stubborn, and I'm trying to find a lot of different ways to understand myself, to see how I can go about different ways where let's say it's beneficial and doesn't, let's say, cause any inconvenience or harm in terms of the workplace or even my daily life, right? But that stubbornness definitely is a good thing and a bad thing. It just keep pushing you to do until you reach success. You just can't accept failure as your answer. So that's something that I just never cared too much to look into. It's just I know that's me. I accepted it already, and I'm trying to find the best way to go about that.
Right.
Yeah.
How has that stubbornness? How has that? You said there's been some good sides and the bad sides. How has that affected you?
Yeah, well, growing up, I think every teacher, every mentor that has kind of took me under their wings, they know I'm a troublemaker, just because to them, I feel like I don't really take, I would say, feedback where they would see me change the way I do things right away. Because for me, I like to go at it a couple times to really know, hey, this is not the right option, and then I start looking for a different path. But the best part about it is that it just keeps me up. I don't, say I'm tired, I'm done. I don't want to see if I can work this out anymore. If I'm ever stuck on any roadblocks, you will see me keep going at it until I get to that point that I'm satisfied. So that's the one part that, like I said, I'm trying to like still to this day trying to manage a right balance of that, right? Because as you get older, you might find times that there's a lot of things pulling you in different directions, right? Work, daily lives, people around you, your friends, and you need to manage it in a way that doesn't burn yourself out physically, right, and mentally as well. So then this way you can continue to go at it your second chance or your third chance, because if you don't control that, I think no matter what mindset you have, it will not be successful anymore. That's through my past experience that hey, this is the next iteration we got to learn from, right? How can we manage our well-being but at the same time still keep going back at it?
Where do you think that comes from? That that whatever it is that's keeping you up and driving you to keep on working, and maybe it's figure out a problem that you're trying to solve, or where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, one, like I said, just the way I think I'm wired, but I think another big component now as I've grown up, uh, there's a lot of people that have helped me in my career. A
Mm,
lot of people I look up to who are seniors, who are, let's say, even people that's just beyond work, right? Even people like my grandpa. They're amazing people that has given me so much in terms of their wisdoms and their words that I learned a lot, and I felt like I owe it to them that I need to give them that respect to at least go for it, or else I feel like their effort is absolutely wasted, and that's something that I think coming from an Asian household, the respect part has always been kind of beat into me growing up, where um, if anyone has ever helped you or anything, you got to find a way to pay that back even more than how they have given it to you. So that has been something that's always been sitting in the back of my mind. Even friends, right? Like the way that they have helped me. We go whenever I need to chat about things and I just want to get things off of my mind, things like that. It's always going to be in my mind, knowing that hey, there's so many people that helped me along this journey, even making, let's say, my transition to a different job. I need to find a way to make sure that whatever they have helped me on doesn't go to waste, and I'm able
mm,
to find success in that where I can hopefully one day pay it back.
right. So there's definitely some gratitude in that, it seems like. And do you think would you say it's what's driving you is ambition, or kind of faith in your ability to solve problems?
I think it's definitely still a good mix on that as well. It's never just one part. I do have a lot of ambitions of wanting to be at a certain stage in life, just because of having a small taste of what it's like to be, let's say, being in, like, let's say, the ultimate level of success, right? I used to be heavily involved in sports, and being able to, let's say, now where I see what it's like to be in the major leagues, because I have met friends, our coaches that are now in the majors, and then I get invited to kind of just feel what it's like to be there. Like, wow, like being at that level is definitely like part of my ambition of wanting to continue. Until I get to that level, there is no resting. But even when I get there, we gotta pave the way to see what we can continue to grow into, right? So, part of it, 100%. There's a lot of ambition towards that, just wanting to do it on my own terms. I don't really need to depend on anyone to give me anything. I just want to get there, right? I get there
Yeah.
in terms of my own journey. So that's one part. But another part, yeah, I think, again, it's just like you said, the gratitude, wanting to pay it back, just to see the smile of the people that has been, given, that has lent a hand to, is wow, like it gives me so much more value in terms of what I've accomplished, and being able to share that back with them is just beyond anything that I think you can ever buy with money. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you're more people oriented or thing oriented?
I think at this moment, 100% more people oriented. Growing up, probably more things oriented or material oriented, just because I didn't really know where I was heading, and I needed, something to prove that I'm at a certain level. But now I think as you start to understand yourself a little bit more and build a certain pathway or your own brand, you want to be able to make sure, hey, everyone understands your journey and your story, and then hopefully you can leverage others to see how they can be a part of that, right? Or you could be a part of others as well, where you guys can leverage each other's success and continue to build the next step. So I think nowadays I'm very much a people oriented person where I want to take a page out of other people's books, but also be able to hopefully help others if they ever need that, in terms of guidance or any mentorship like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. There's, I guess if you look at the broad data, it's that, in personality, men tend to be more thing oriented, and so that's where the people that they become, doctors or specialists, engineers, mathematicians. That's kind of why part of the reason they believe that you see that trend of men going to that side, and then women tend to be more people oriented. Um, I'm the same as you. I'm kind of people oriented. That's kind of what's interested me in, psychology and philosophy. But I guess one thing that you do see in the people that are, let's say lean more towards the people side is, they're good at managerial roles. They're good at, maybe social work, and so they tend to really thrive in those positions.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more a bit more about you mentioned like the major leagues, that kind of grew some more ambition in you. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, yeah. Like, over the last couple of years, I got experience. I'm very thankful of some of my friends and my network for being able to provide that to me, to be able to go have those experiences that I've always dreamed of. The first one that really kind of hit me in terms of wanting to continue to keep building and then hopefully be at that certain level one day is one of my good friends, and I used to coach with them. We met probably about more than 10 years ago when I started my first job. I was a working at a sports camp as a assistant director at the time for that location. And one of the coaches that are also another director at the time, who was coaching baseball. I was coaching basketball, and that has continued to be an amazing friendship where he has led me to fall in love with baseball. And the thing is, when he got into the majors, so he worked as a personal interpreter and assistant to these, let's say, Japanese players are were in the major leagues. At the time, he was with Yusei Kikuchi with the Blue Jays, and it was an amazing news where seeing him. He spent many years trying to get to that level of reaching the majors, and to see that his hard work finally paid off, I was like, wow, you know, I it gave his story so much more. I feel like weight and value, and being able to kind of see it from like the very, I wouldn't say very beginning, but a good chunk of it before. I seen his hardship. I seen how many part-time jobs he would need to take to continue that journey, and didn't know if he would make it. But once he did, and then being able to share that with his friends, so sharing that with myself, like he gave me tickets to for myself and my dad to come see him at one of the games. And after the game, I was able to meet some of the players, go into the clubhouse at the time. And even the first player I met, coming out of the elevator going to the player access area, was Vladdy.
Mm,
And I was like, wow, that just completely gave me a starstruck moment. But yeah, just like standing down at the stadium, you see like a crowd of 40,000 people chanting and coming to see you play, right? Things like that. Just I'm like, wow, I would love to be in that stage or in that spot, because the energy that I can feed off of this just feels amazing. It gives you meaning to what you do at work. It gives you meaning to your overall career, right? And that's the part that I felt like I need to continue to keep putting in work, and continue to also just be like my friend Yusuke, where believe in your journey. He's I back then I feel like it was very hard for him to continue, just because sports is not something that is takes it lightly on anyone that's pursuing it. As you can see, it's only the top 0.01% people would make it ever to the majors, on all levels. You could be a player, you could be a coach, you could be right. So just seeing how his journey played out, I was like, wow, I want to be able to have exactly, something similar to that or even better. So then I could one day, talk about that journey, how I gone there. And then being, like I said, standing in that stage, it feels amazing to finally know you're everything that you believed in, or whoever didn't believe in you, didn't matter. Like you are your own journey. You put in that effort, you trust in the process, and here you are. So it's a good confidence boost to know, you knew yourself really well, and you should continue to keep doing that, right? So that's one part. That's one of the journeys that really pushed me over. But being in consulting, I was very lucky to have the support of Deloitte at the time to host my own basketball
Right.
initiative, and that part gave me a lot of opportunities to host events, but also be a part of certain events. And last year, I was able to join as a part of Deloitte in a charity event where we played with a lot of the MBA alumni, and where we were literally in a stadium and arena that felt like a little bit of like a 1 day MBA contract, where there's a lot of people coming to watch you play, and it felt really good to know like wow, like some of the things that I was building towards, it led me to that. And as much as like how far consulting and sports may seem, somehow those two still connected in some way, and it led me to continue to build on top of that, right? So yeah, just that feeling, those feelings of these small things I've done throughout the year has just continued to push me to want to continue to build on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Did that meet? So you mentioned that you're sitting in the stands and watching your friend in the major leagues, and you get this imagined feeling. You don't quite know it yet, but you're, oh, that would be so cool if I could experience that myself. And my hard work leads to this almost spotlight center stage moment, and then you kind of do have it. You mentioned the Deloitte thing, but did that match what you were expecting? How did that What did that feel like?
I felt like, honestly, I never had an expectation of what it felt like, because for the longest time, I don't even know if I could make it, to even be standing at a stage like that and have that audience, right? But once you get a taste for it, like you want it now. Like there's nothing that really stops you. And I think that's what makes a big difference, where you see a lot of the athletes now, they tell you, hey, a lot of times when they were kids, they went to certain camps, they were invited to certain tournaments. I think that's what gave them that, hunger or that stride to want to be there. And a lot of times you see a lot of those kids that join those special events or camps make it into the majors, right? Or into the big leaguers. So yeah, I didn't know what it was like. I had no expectation of it, but once you get a taste, that's the part that really just keep pushing you. You're like, wow, there's so much more out there for you to want to obtain. I'm not saying that I feed off of just wanting attention. That wasn't the thing, but it's more about just it's like a validation in a way, that knowing, hey, we're on the right direction. Let's continue to go. Put more effort into that and see where we can come out. In terms of at the end of the journey, and see the amount of people that you can impact on a positive level, right? uh, just like sports, a lot of kids see a lot of athletes as their role models, and I love the fact that kids do put so much attention into that, because sports is a good way to be active, is a good way to meet friends, it's a good way to promote a lot of positive things. So knowing that I could, let's say back then in sports, have a stage and have an audience that I can make such a positive impact on. That's what kept pushing me to
Right.
want to build that. Yeah.
Right. Did you played so you play basketball, right? Is that something that you did growing up too?
Yeah, like basketball was a late sport for me. I
Okay.
was more so badminton, and then I played hockey as well. But my mom was very protective of me, so hockey was a no go after like 1 year,
Oh, okay.
just being how physical it was. But
Yeah.
my dad was like, "Hey, you're looking a little, kind of under the average for height, so I'm gonna put you into basketball." And I hated basketball to start, but slowly, I think just the friendship. I feel like basketball really has a different type of brotherhood. When you play in teams, when you play in rep leagues and things, it's different. It builds you tough, and you
Mm.
guys go out as one team, right? So that part really started to get me into it. And I continue that sport ever since. I think I joined when I was like grade 9 at the time, but that sport has continued to be kind of who I am, on the side of my life, and just being in terms of fitness. Yeah, like basketball is my thing.
What? Why do you think your dad did that? You said that you're maybe on the lower, below average height. So basketball is not the natural first idea, right? You'd think that somebody that's tall would be somebody that would be pushed into basketball. So why do you think you did that?
Yeah, I think he just thinks a lot of jumping would probably be able to stretch a little bit of my legs. But again, at the same time, he knew like I have mentioned earlier, I have like things like ADHD where I'm always moving, I'm always jumping, I'm always doing like everything. So he probably felt like that sport fit me very well in a way where I can just really unleash a lot of that energy out. And I move a lot, so that speed has always been kind of inherent in me. So he just threw me in, signed me up for at first just a local league, and then just kept going from there. So he thought I'll be done in like a year, but I started to really like it. Met a lot of friends from basketball and just kept going. And to this day, I'm gonna say like probably a third of my friend group literally all come from the basketball court.
Wow.
I go in there, I don't know any of them, but slowly they all become really good friends of mine over time. And that's the part that I really love about this sport. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so camaraderie, you said, brotherhood gives you something to really push yourself. But those are kind of things that, I mean, maybe they do develop fast, but not usually. And so what do you think? You mentioned you liked it, but why do you think you liked it after 1 year?
Yeah, I think at the same time, excluding the part about the brotherhood and whatnot, when you play in games, right? Like I mentioned, it probably was a little bit of a taste of, being on that stage, right? You are on the center stage, everyone's watching you because there's only one basketball. There's going to be an audience of parents that were watching. There's going to be all the players watching you, and when you have the ball, you get that small moment of spotlight, right? To show what you're all about. I think it's like stuff like that where when you have show out games, like certain games you play really well in, it really just starts to get you wanting to come back for more. Hey, I could really keep working on my game, on my craft, because I want more of that spotlight. I want to be able to show different parts I've been working on for a while, and see what the audience reacts to that. So things like that, I think, just also played a little bit of why it kept me coming back. And it probably plays very well into what we have mentioned earlier in terms of being at, hopefully one day, the being the best of what you do, right? Being on that center stage. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Have you Do you read? Do you read much?
I would say at this moment, not as much.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I spend a lot of time just talking with computers too much nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's
Yeah,
fair.
that's the part that I think my career has kind of pushed me into. Um, yeah, just I think now, even with work, we're learning about how to be able to build, let's say, AI agents, right? So you're, in a way,
Yeah.
you're just always talking to chatbots, talking to all that. So it just gets me wanting to, like, after all that, just shut down, right? Just take some rest. So I feel like the reading part has pretty much been non-existent the last couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I I like to try to read a lot, and I don't know, do you know Fyodor Dostoevsky? Have you heard of that
I have
author?
not.
Okay, he's really one of the greats, Russian novelist. He's very popular and very profound, but he has this book I think you might like. It's called Notes from Underground. Basically the idea is one of his great novels, but it's a story of from the perspective of this very bitter narrator. He's called the Underground Man.
Mhm.
And he's just a bitter guy. He's completely ungrateful for everything, and he's almost out of spite of everything. He just lets it consume him. But and so the format of this book is kind of like a confession from the author. And one of the things that he argues is very, very famous and very profound, I think, is that one of the ideas is that he basically says, you give you give people, you put them in this utopia. You give them, I think it's like a shower of bliss, something like that. And you put them in this position so they're optimally happy that they can do nothing but sleep, eat cakes, and as he says in like his very like Russian humor is,
Yeah.
sleep, eat cakes, and busy themselves with the continuation of the species. And even in those conditions, just out of sheer ingratitude and sheer spite, they would, people would just break something just to see something happen, right? And
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons it's so profound is that just one of the things that they're saying is that like you give all, this is kind of like the modern day, dopamine, doom scrolling. You give them all the happiness they can have, and it's just not enough. It's not enough meaning. It's not enough drive to go out and be somebody that is, let's say, a
Mhm.
go getter, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. People don't loathe suffering. You just talked about how you know you almost, just like a lot of people, there's surveys of people on their deathbed, or you can just ask anyone. It's like people want to look back on what they do and say like, that was hard, but it was so worth it. You know, despite everything I had to go through, I am so glad that I did it because I pushed myself to the limits.
Yeah.
I really did that, and that feels great. And maybe there's something to that. This responsibility and this meaning that is so motivating and like purposeful. Um, I'm curious, how do you think about meaning, and do you think about, I guess, what drives you every day,
Yeah. Yeah.
or is it something you just feel? How do
Like
you?
I feel like at the end of the day, like I told you, it's just I need to do it, right? And then I just like it's like that OC pushing me. Let's do it until I get to that level, like where I want to be, or
Yeah,
else there really is no other like option. It sounds harsh, to maybe some people thinking, hey, there's no way that I can take a break, or maybe I'm doing too hard to my body. But let's say even just like basketball, I think nowadays a lot of kids just care more about the attention, so they don't want to play, let's say, defense on some guy wanting to possibly dunk on them, right? They'll just let them dunk.
right.
I'm like, no, like,
So
why are we doing
embarrassing.
that? Yeah. Keep trying to block them until, there is failure, right? If they dunk on you, that's fine. Why do you care about the poster? Why do you care about people like saying it's like you're there to play sport? You're there, your job is to prevent them from scoring. So why are we taking it like, a little bit laid back? There is no laid back, and that's the same way as like I play all the time. Like people always think like I don't give up on like any play. I just go at it, right? If you dunk on me, you dunk on me. I don't care. I'm gonna make it hard on you, right? That's my
Right,
job. And so it's like the same mentality I have at work or at life and everything, like how I do things. It's I don't really care how people see what I'm doing right now, in terms of it's like part of the journey, it's like mid journey, but at the end of the day what you'll see is the end product, right? That I'm going to be very happy on, because when I look back, what really counts is still the end product. But I did learn that, hey, being able to silent all the haters in between all that, that's the part that also adds a lot of fun detail into telling my story one day, right? Like, a lot of people are scared of failure. They're scared of how people would see them, scared of embarrassment. I'm like, this is just how it is. It's like going to the gym, right? We go to the gym doing sets knowing that we'll do a set to failure, but you
right,
accept that because over time you actually get stronger. So why can't we just apply that to pretty much everything you do, right? Yeah, you might fail the first like many times, and people may be like, "Oh, you can't get there." But no, it's like the same philosophy of going to the gym. over time you're getting better every single time you do it already. So why do I care how people say or whatever they might post? So I think that's the point that really separates. I think now with a lot of what most people are probably stuck on, like I said, they're just worried too much about attention and media. To me, maybe I'm a little old school, or just the way that, like I said, my brain is wired. I just don't really care,
Yeah.
in a way. I'm like, I'm here for myself, right? The job's not done, so we just gotta keep grinding. That's how it is.
Right. And so, okay, so let me kind of give a little. I don't want to misrepresent you, so just let me know if I've missed the mark anyway. But you kind of talked about how you had this early disinterest in technology, and maybe one of the things that you were driven and driven by is just that you've had that early sense of what it feels like to work hard and to be rewarded for it. And maybe part of the reason is because of your experience with sports, and also maybe some influence with your grandfather, your parents, that have kind of it seems like your mom was pretty nurturing in that regard, and your father was pretty encouraging, which is obviously a very good mix of parental influence, let's say. um and then let's say at first you mentioned you had this kind of reluctance and almost like hesitance to engage in technology, but university comes and that kind of changes, and you've always had this curiosity to go figure things out and kind of expand your understanding of the world, let's say, and your ability to do things. You kind of mentioned that that's kind of one of the things that drives you. And so you get to this point where, okay, COVID happens, and it's a bit unfortunate, but now you got this opportunity that you can make for yourself to enter into this career in consulting, and so that's what you did. And so, well, you did that for the what, 2 years?
Yeah,
When How long? Okay, 2 years. And well, now you've got to this point where at least insofar as your career and your goal was aimed at climbing this Deloitte ladder, which, by the way, in itself is a feat, just being in that company, right? I mean, maybe you have a better idea, but from my understanding, out of the big four, Deloitte is like the one, right? So just being in there is pretty great, but then you know there's all it seems like you also have the drive to not just be great because you're in Deloitte, but be great in Deloitte, which is a whole other thing on its own, right? But 2 years go by, and now you've had a kind of a pivot or a step in a different direction from this, climb Deloitte. And so insofar as you're, you know, going the traditional Deloitte path, you've kind of veered off the path, right? And I guess my presumption is that it wasn't enough to maybe expand the full scope of your ambition, right? So why the interest in Lyft? I guess the first thing I'm curious about, why even take the risk to pursue this, right? You've got to kind of restart in some sense. And
yeah.
so yeah, what did you realize in your life that produced this change in orientation, and why do you think he was justified?
Yeah. Well, again, everything that we talked about very much ties into this, because I hope maybe from that, you and the audience can get a sense of, a little bit who I am, where I'm always just on my own like path, on my own pace, right?
Right.
Like I mentioned just now, I don't really care about what others kind of think of me, even if they're trying to make fun of me. All I know is my end goal, where I want to be, and so that part has always been like, I don't really measure myself like in terms of my success, how, let's say, they would structure it, let's say on pen and paper, right? Oh, this is what will get you to the next level, this is what I just don't really measure myself there. I would be part of it because, just I understand that's how they want to be able to quantify who you are as a performer, as a practitioner, right? But for me, I know if I'm doing well or not, right? I always measure myself on different measures that I set my own benchmarks on, and so it got to a point where I felt like, I didn't really feel like I was growing much anymore. I think, in a way, um, and I wouldn't say it's anything on Deloitte or anything. I know the market right now is very tough, and the opportunities that you'll get to learn when you're in consulting is heavily dependent on the market conditions, right? Just depending on what comes from the pipeline for projects and what projects are open at the moment for you to be part of. So I realized that I'm stuck in a point where internally I'm not feeling very happy about my progression anymore in terms of my knowledge for technical areas, but also at the same time, I feel like looking at what the cards are for the company, they just they're tied, they're hand tied, right? They can't really do anything just because of the geopolitical factors are involved. So it led to me wanting to kind of look ahead, be able to prevent myself from being stagnant. And that's where it led me to a part where I looked into Lyft, where they had an opportunity for me to continue a previous experience I had in automation, but that also means I would get the ability to be an expert in that, right? Continue, because that's going to be my sole responsibility. And I thought, hey, after 2 years of trying a little bit of everything, I think it's about time. I owe it to myself to take the next step, that I need to become, an expert in something. I can't just have a very surface level knowledge in terms of, let's say, management consulting, in terms of implementations. I feel like 2 years is enough for me to kind of understand the main, kind of like gears of how those things work. So, you know, yeah, I just told myself I owe it to myself in terms of my wanting to climb that ladder internally of achieving the different goals. So let's take that, you know take that new responsibility. I think at first I was a little scared. I'm like, Peter, are you ready? Because everyone's going to be dependent on you to ask how this works, how that works. Can you build something, right? And so, but to me, I was like, as much as I'm scared and nervous, that's how I know there's so much room there for me to grow and to improve myself in, right? So I was like, I'm glad that I felt that way. And so I was very happy to be pursuing down that path and then joining Lyft to, yeah, pursue the automation side and also learn more about how AI automation will, be rolled out to the company in terms of our team helping to lead that. And then me learning about all that to improve my own technical expertise. So that's the part that I think has really much made me realize that I want to make that career pivot. Yeah.
Mm. And did that prove to be right? I mean, I know you're only month and a half in, but what maybe you can tell us about a bit about your job and what's changed since joining Lyft.
Yeah, like it's only been a little over I would say a month, but in that time span I've already like been exposed to so many things, right? Because the team is always looking into new technologies, new softwares, to see how we can continue to innovate on the way that we do our business. And then I never felt like there's so many resources and things I could just kind of play around with than before. They're investing money into a lot of AI products, and so that has given me such an exposure that I feel like I'm on the forefront of what is possible with let's say AI automation at the moment. So that part I have just loved so much, just the knowledge and the ability to continue to put my skills into all these different areas that's pushing the boundaries of tech. So yeah, that part has been amazing, and I've been able to use that, leverage it, create my own workflows, create my own automations and solutions, and hopefully be able to bring those into the different teams I'm helping with, and then make a significant impact in the next couple of months. So
Mm.
that's the part that's been really amazing.
Yeah, that really digs into your, that old anecdote that you talked about of, things just were working too slowly with the technology, and here you are automating things, making it more efficient.
Yeah.
Can you dive into that a bit more? Tell me
Yeah.
about what is this AI automation that you're doing?
Yeah. Back then, I think, I know AI is the whole buzzword these days, and people just throw that in there for everything, and it feels like is it really like there or anything? But I 100% guarantee that AI automation is going to be a real big game changer as well, in terms of a lot of the different business process that's happening in the back end that a lot of people may not, see all the time, but I'm seeing the capabilities of what can come out of this tool, and it's really amazing because back then, things that, let's say, I would spend hours and hours do as a back in consulting, let's say even just making like PowerPoint decks that are themed and formatted correctly, like we would spend overnight trying to get those things ready for the next day. Things like automation and AI, like they could do that in like minutes, right? And then they could really just, after you have coded a certain logic or workflow into it, they can move that product into, hey, notify the team, right? This is ready. Give a review, signed off, and then they'll fire it right back to the next stage that is required. Things like that, I feel like just gives us so much more efficiency and accuracy to what we do in our daily businesses, and you'll see it across. I hopefully across the board one day, when everybody is more invested into this area. But yeah, like the efficiency levels is absolutely, I think, phenomenal in terms of what it can bring change to your company to. And I wouldn't say I can give too much detail at the moment, just because I feel like everyone that's learning or getting into AI, we're all just at the end of the day beginners, because every week there's a new feature, there's a new update to what you can do, right? So by no means I'm an expert, and I feel like I can just share a little bit of what I hope I will be able to build out of that. And yeah, maybe if we chat again in a year, it will be completely different in terms of where we take this next step with AI automation, right? So, but yeah, I can tell you a lot of it that we do that's very manual. I think we now have the capability to very much code an AI agent to be able to perform the same work as, let's say, you extracting the data from a database and then inputting that and then doing formulations and what we could absolutely do that right now. And we don't need to waste any more manual hours in that and let you do more like meaningful work, right? That requires more analysis, that requires unique methods. But anything that is more just on a regular day basis and things, we can easily help you achieve more efficient processes through AI automation. Yeah.
Right. Right. So you're, you know, I mean, it's kind of not as hands-on as if you were doing these processes yourself, but it's certainly more hands-on than it sounds like, than the consulting and actually doing the work, let's say, and less so, well, consulting, right? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, how career wise and even just in your day-to-day life, how does that feel different, or what's
Yeah.
been the
Yeah.
implications of that for you?
Like I think consulting, like I've always said, it's a great place for you to come out the first 2 or 3 years. You know, I feel like over time though, it does really drag learners or the doers down a lot in terms of their work output, just because you have so many ideas coming out of school. You have that fresh mind that hasn't been worked for many years, that's tired. And so the ideas of how to do different, let's say processes or different tasks that you've been assigned for a certain project, a lot of times you're actually pretty restricted in terms of how you can perform these tasks,
How
right?
so?
One is, is it approved tools because the client and your company needs to approve it. So like a lot of times where you want to do something that's very innovative, let's say creating new features or even automating, let's say, a certain process, a lot of times you don't even have the ability to use the tool that is like that you understand how to use to be able to improve that process, just because maybe the client doesn't want to pay for it, they don't trust in that tool, or maybe your company don't trust in it. So a lot of times I feel like consulting could be so restricting to the doers that have all these ideas, that, like I said, after a couple years, you just get so mentally tired of that you no longer want to think that way anymore. You just think, oh, it's gonna get shut down before I even, get out of the brainstorming phase with my manager. So once you exit and go into industry, things like me being at Lyft, when you have an idea, that can legit be the new process. Like, oh, we should look into that. Maybe we can put some money to invest into it and see if it actually brings, improvement to what we're doing so far. So things like that has been such an amazing change of like scenery, knowing that my ideas aren't always going to be shut down. And it could literally be a game changer in your work, right? If you really have a
Yeah.
good suggestion, and we look into like, oh wow, this is really something we should have done. That is probably gives you so much more like energy and meaning to your work, like every day you go in, than like you going back to consulting. Not that I have any like I hate consulting or anything, but I just that's one personal experience I felt where whenever I had ideas back then, a lot of times it just would not fly because of the compliance issues of different rules. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's neat that you have, I kind of mentioned, I guess it was before we were shooting, but part of the reason that I started the podcast was to kind of ex- explore and expand my curiosity in areas outside of my own, let's say, cultural bubble. And it's kind of, well, there's multiple ways to do that. One is you just talk to other people, but another is you just get out of that bubble, and that would be, hindsight, let's say. And so now you've got the privilege of hindsight, of looking back and seeing now the difference between the things that were just like, they seem normal, in Deloitte. Maybe that this whole idea that your ideas would just get shut down and you can't act on them, maybe at some point that just became a normal thing. And it seems like it's been very clear that, oh, like, this is not a normal thing. And I quite like having, the ability to, like you said, explore an idea that you have.
Yep.
So I guess I don't want to get, spend too much time on the Deloitte thing, because you've got a lot of other things that are very exciting. But I do want to step back for a second into that. One thing that I find very interesting, and you've kind of hinted at it, but there's this, you could say, this instinct to expand, and I think everybody has it. But for you, it was the case that you just have a drive to explore your ideas and see where it goes. And maybe you felt that with, let's say, with basketball, where you are, the whole idea is that, if you're put on the edge of what is kind of difficult for you, but not overly difficult and not too easy that it's too boring, it's engaging, and it's something that you want to keep pushing and keep doing, and that feels rewarding, right? um and maybe you can, you mentioned that, well, it didn't really feel like you had this, at some point in Deloitte you started to realize, like, oh, I feel like I'm a little restricted in that manner. I can't explore. I can't walk out onto this edge, let's say.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to go down the rabbit hole, but this edge is something very interesting in psychology, and even in theology. It's part of the reason, this edge is part of the reason why the Hawaiians worshipped and they really valued surfing, because they're just on
Mm.
the edge of the horizon. And there's something really profound about that, and I think that you lived through it. And well, now you have, you're 2 years in, and you mentioned, oh, it wasn't like you came to this conclusion. Partly it was rational, but part of it, you mentioned, is like, there's this fear and this excitement, and you felt that, and so you're like, oh, I should really find out what this is. I don't know what it is, but let me just explore. Let me just find out what it is, and that's what brought you out, right? um, and it seems like it turned out to be a good thing, and you've learned about, oh, I feel a lot more free, and I feel like I can expand and, let's say, continue this journey that young Peter wanted to do. And
Yeah.
can you now that you're out of it, can you tap back into what that Deloitte culture was like? What was it? What did it feel like? And And what was it like to be in that environment?
Yeah, yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, everyone is very much like an alpha like type of in terms of the work style, right?
Right.
Everyone gets things done. They go at you know there really is no boundary as to like when things are done. Like there, you know how people always say it's like 9 to 5. There really is
Yeah.
no 9 to 5,
Yeah.
especially in
Nine to
terms of
nine.
yeah, like there's times I work. I wouldn't say I work, but I was like, online since like 7 a.m. to like 11 p.m. because there's things going on, right? There's your project work, and then there's your internal work, and all those things, and your work. Everyone is literally operating like that. You're not really special actually when you're in like that consulting culture. So, um, I think like when I first got into it, I was like, wow, this is a lot of work. Am I the only one? Like I'm putting all this hour. Maybe I should get compensated. Like you think that way, but slowly your mindset just changed. Like, everyone is literally like that. You're not special
Mm.
in this team. And so you need to just continue to, be part of the team, contribute to it. Because if you don't, everyone's literally already operating at their like highest limit. And if you literally, drop the ball, no one can really cover you. And you're going to really be, asserting a lot of strain on the rest of the team, right? So that expectation, as I mentioned earlier again, um, the expectation of being grateful and also be respectful to give back on how everyone has kind of supported your journey. It's the same with this. The team is there because we all want to achieve success as as one Deloitte, right? So you don't want to be the one that is the dragging the rest of the team behind. So you want to give that respect and by working just as hard. And so, but that culture, right? It over time it really does take a lot of strain too, like mentally and physically.
How so?
I'm so Yeah, I'm someone that whenever there's stress, you may not see it, but you'll actually see it from my skin because I would get a lot of acne, and I still have scars here and there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's from the days of me being in consulting. But those are things that I knew going into the job, right? There's going to be a lot of stress. But like I said, yeah, I think over time, um, always operating at your highest level, it will not bring the best out of you. Because I feel like, here and there, when you operate at your highest level, yes, it can train you to be better. You will learn a lot of things from you. But when you're always operating that, it's like when we used to tell, like when we're like as athletes, the only way you can play for a long time in your career, just like LeBron, is because he's always operating at his comfort zone. He's not operating his highest level, but his comfort zone is literally a lot of people's highest level because he's trained to that point. So if you haven't even gotten the chance to train yourself to a standard or ability to always operate at a certain level that you can contribute, but without being at your highest level, then I think that's going to be very hard on yourself mentally and physically, where you just burn out. You're done. You give up on all the meaning and the journey of wanting to pursue this. Yeah, like that was, I felt like a lot
Did
of
you feel that?
times, yeah, the culture now, just because of the market is very tough. So as much as we can do to cut costs, to be more efficient, counts now, right? There really is no room for for errors and for us to play around. So it's been tough. I think hearing the stories of what consulting used to be like maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago is probably quite different from now, because even now you don't see those glamorous like big parties anymore all the time. You don't get to always go out, right, to be eating all those nice dinners with the client. Like those are almost all gone, right?
Really?
In a way that, yeah, just because of where we are like in the market, and every dollar counts, right? Some teams are still very well like financially stable, so they will still have these socials quite often, but it varies by team, of course, right? By who's leading the teams. But yeah, a lot of times I think my 2 years, I saw the trend of where it felt like my first year had a lot more of these socials and things just for us to kind of catch a break again. But in my second year, a lot of those are just kind of the on the decline, right? So yeah, I feel like the current status of where it was very demanding in all levels. Yeah.
Hmm. And so you mentioned you kind of started to feel that burnout and almost that sense of meaning was starting to drop off a little bit. Is this a common thing? Is this like, it seems like, if everybody is an alpha in this sense, what for you it's the gratitude and the meaning, and it's the drive external from, to grow and to, expand your own ability. But what do you think is driving the majority of the people in there?
Yeah, I think you when you go into any high performing like industry or company, you'll realize, especially with IB, right? Especially with yeah, like in consulting, a lot of people actually like I feel like they never really wanted to be consultants or anything. Deep down, I felt like I sensed that a lot of people actually just love the name or the prestige
Mm,
to being in that industry, right? I
right.
told you I never really cared about going into it because nothing really attracted me when I was growing up. And I was just so dead set on finance and banking because that's what I enjoyed. But I somehow just fell into that bucket because of maybe my experience, right? So I was like, okay, I'll give that a try. But a lot of people very much pursue that because they know the prestige that comes with, oh, I'm a consultant for X and X, or I do this. So I felt that a lot from certain people that I would meet, let's say during like networking events, not let's say always at Deloitte, but let's say when you're networking with other companies that are also in the similar field, you can feel their energy when they say that, right? But we
Mm,
all know when we work, it's demanding to the point where like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Like,
right.
so that's how you know the difference. I felt like to me, I was like, oh, so the main part that's really getting you going is really that prestige and that image of
Yeah.
like the life that people would imagine you would be in. But it's actually probably quite different from how they imagine it. It's not like glamorous to the point where, oh, we get like the highest pay of every, like, the pay isn't really like, I feel like it's not enough to compensate. A lot of times, I'm sure you ask anybody in this field, a lot of times they'll say it could be more. Right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of things I would say just really don't push people to, I feel like, in my opinion, to really want to do it where they enjoy it. I feel like they really just do it because, again, the attention, the name to it, the prestige, and it all relates back again to what I was telling you earlier, where I feel like nowadays everyone's so focused on that because of the social media part that they can put that title on, right? Or they can tell others. And then so this way they can get that, I don't know, maybe some kind of special treatment. Some people do really, look for those. So, yeah, I feel like that's something that really stuck out a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certainly, I've never seen another, I don't think I've seen another industry that really likes to talk about how long they work, and it's the case everywhere. You hear people, and especially like in finance or in consulting, and it's like, look how long I worked for, look how hard I worked. Um, and it's kind of, and then like you mentioned, it's like, oh, that's like, just saying that is the recognition that they're looking for. And but then you go out into any job, you probably experience it now, like you're probably working long hours still. It's the case for any career that you work hard and you work a lot. but
Yeah,
but I think there's something about in the big four culture where it's just being overworked is like, I don't know, it's almost like it's a it's a, it's a virtue there,
yeah,
and it's something to, make it clear that everybody knows. But and I think this is the case in Korea and Japan, although like it's very, it's in these days it's not so much that way. But that was a very popular thing, don't leave before your boss leaves, and
yeah,
make sure they're there before. And so I think it's always interesting to see that side of, oh, what, the prestige and how that drives people to do things. And sometimes it can be helpful, if you don't have a plan or you don't know what you want to do. It's like there's a reason that there's prestige and there's
Yeah.
some merit to these jobs, right? Did
So
you did you find the how did you combat or even make use of that, let's say, the temptation or even the usefulness of having, these virtues and the status of being in Deloitte, let's say.
mhm. Yeah, like you have mentioned, Tyler, like it gives people a little bit more meaning at the time. I think I definitely felt that way because you're a new grad. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. All right, maybe I'll kind of discover a little bit more of like where I want to specialize one day. That was like what gave me a lot of like I would say optimism because I know the company's so big. There's so many things I could probably jump into.
Right.
Yeah, so that was probably the biggest thing that kind of stuck out in terms of that area. But yeah, like I knew I'm young. I need to kind of go through the trenches, as what everyone has always said. So
Yeah.
then this way you earn your right to go to the next level or to go to the other different roles, right? So that was something what I just been sold on that. I expect that, yeah, seniority is a thing. And like I said, just giving that respect, I need to do what I need, what has all the dues before I could ask to be, put into the next stage. So I didn't really question it. I just took it as, yeah, that's where my stage and my identity is right now. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's I guess a good place to jump into the status realm. This idea, you mentioned a bit about how, you I'm gonna ask you earlier, but you have a tilt, let's say, towards being people oriented, and in consulting that often is something that you need to have, because not only are you, you know working with people, but you also need to go from project to project, right? And so one of the things that takes out of you is, well, it's kind of like freelancing. Part of your job is that you're relying on your ability to network and to get the next one. So what have you learned in, let's say, in networking and relationships that, you mentioned, well, you don't really like the status stuff, but sometimes you got to play game, and so there's some use to it. what have
Yeah.
what have you learned there?
Yeah, I think, um, you know, for myself, my goal has always been trying to be as genuine, as honest as, who I am, right? Like how you see me right now is how my family will see me, how, everybody will see me. But when you're networking, especially in terms of, let's say, on a career level, I think you'll see a lot of people wearing different types of masks, right? I didn't even realize there was like such a different, like so many games being played all at once by, let's say, it could be by one person or by one, like by a certain party, right? Because they have goals of, let's say, when you're in accounting, I mean when you're in consulting, yeah, there's so many projects that you want to be able, to place a bid in and also win, where I learned that a lot of the seniors will be very different in terms of how they chat or talk to, let's say, certain like vendors or other clients when it comes to even talking with you or internally, right? But that's when I realized, hey, there's so many masks that you need to wear when you're in a industry that is very social and out there, like people oriented, because that is probably what could set the difference of if your company is going to be selected for a certain bid or not.
Right.
And so that's the part that I think I'm still kind of like learning about and exploring, because I thought back then, hey, everything is done very structurally. You submit a bid based off of what they ask, or you do your best to show your best, and then you follow the rules of not going too far in terms of like trying to make things a little bit personal or anything like that, right? So I thought it's very structured, but no, like it's at the end of the day, everything is still, on a relationship basis, right? The way you chat with them, the way you kind of give off a certain like maybe vibe of your team, of your company. I guess those are probably the trade secrets of how each leader goes about making their business. So that's something that I'm still discovering, and uh, I feel like I need to definitely learn a little bit more about. Not saying that I it's people are disingenuine, but there's definitely an art to that game, from what I
Right.
realize. Yeah,
Right.
and so that could be, I would, I don't know, it could very define, I think, a lot of your success in this as well. You got to play the game, unfortunately, right? I learned very early on about playing the game, which is like playing golf, right? It's so easy to strike a conversation with, let's say, a lot of the more senior level guys, because they all love to play golf. And, I would say a lot of them aren't that great because maybe they start a little later. But when you have a conversation, maybe you're kind of good at the game as well, like playing golf. They want to come to you all the time. They're very available, even though they're senior, when there's something that they want from you, right? So I think that goes to the same as, when you go into speaking of vendors and other clients, when there's something you want, when something that they want from you, they're actually very available for you, right? That's what I mean by there's an art to it, and can very much change the level of your success when it
Yeah.
comes to that. So that's something that I've learned, and that I'm sharing a little bit about, where I'm trying to spend a little bit more effort on. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, you started that interestingly with, it's a big thing about authenticity and being genuine. I there's a very similar problem in academia, and to summarize, it's that you can, in some ways, academia is very corruptible. You can false publications, you can false data, and if you have enough people on your side and you're, let's say, crafty enough with it, you can develop a pretty decent career based on, let's say, a lie, things that you make up in academia. And and so it's very corruptible, and this is the case that, it's, well, it can be on purpose that you corrupt it, or it could be by accident. But the underlying thing is that, well, at some point, there's, let's say, there's a structure of truth that you're trying to, let's say, fracture. And so by doing that, everything that you do in your life is fractionated, and like you said, you've got all these masks that you got to put on, and at some point that's going to catch up to you. And so, you can, in academia, you can have a pretty good career as long as your orientation is not the progression of your career, which is, it's very unique. You got to be truth oriented. And so
Yeah.
that's very clear in academia. It's be truth oriented. There's a higher order goal beyond your own selfish, you know, gain. And it just so happens that if you orient yourself towards that North Star, that your career also does very well.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this authenticity thing. How do you stop yourself from just putting on another mask and playing game, and, in some sense, just stepping on people's shoes, being this, crafty manipulator, because, it could work, and you know what, it might be, it might be an effective strategy. So
Yeah.
what stops you from doing that?
Yeah, I think that's the part that I was going to talk into as well, like how I don't know if being myself is gonna be always the best for where I want to get to, right? As much as I want to be an amazing person where I don't need to be putting on these masks and deceive people, um, I feel like I said, the art of the game is something that you need to kind of understand and get a grasp into before you can really, understand what tools you have, on hand to be able to play those cards. So that's one part that is definitely I'm gonna be continue to put, like I said, more time into understanding, and then be able to know how I could still fuse that with my values and my approach, right? To really show my personal brand. I really believe in having a good personal brand. It's not, there really is no one playbook to this, right? I can't copy one of the seniors or in terms of how they communicate, how they do business. I feel like I should always have my own personal approach to it. And I know for me, people love my energy. They love my authenticity to things. And so, as much as I can learn from the game, I hope I can combine all these different aspects to still reflect exactly who I am, while still trying to, be able to gain what I'm looking for, right? So that's something that I don't think I can be able to answer 100% at this moment, just to be truthfully honest. But it's
Yeah.
something that definitely is a work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that seems to be the case in any endeavor really, but especially one where you're, let's say, sacrificing your immediate desires because you think there's something worthwhile that's worth pursuing, and you just kind of, it's like, oh, I gotta have this like trust that it'll work out, and honestly, it might be even despite everything that you see, the game that you see going on around you. At some level, you gotta just make the leap and be like, you know what, I think this is something worth pursuing. I think there's something valuable in this authenticity that you talked about.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm curious about, because this is actually especially, maybe we'll pivot a little bit, but this is especially relevant to, you mentioned that you like to teach and you like to mentor. I guess there's always two questions that you'll have when it comes to pursuing a career, or even just any adventure in teaching, is it's like, why do I want to teach, obviously, but also like, why do you trust your own thinking? Why do you trust your own, because it's it's very easy to become deluded in your thinking, perception is built that way, is that you often you see the world through your own lens of your goals, and the idea in a lot of psychological literature is that you even act in the way that'll bring out what you want, with obviously, like, I mean, there's some caveats to that, your basic needs and stuff, but the idea is that, like, if you mentioned that you escaped this Deloitte bubble, or stepped away from it, maybe not escaped, but maybe that's a better way to describe it, and you learned a lot, and so the fact that you learned is evidence that maybe you aren't in the moment the best judge of what you really need, right? And there's stuff that you can learn, and so why do you, I guess my question is, why do you trust your own thinking, and what guides that?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I trust in my own thinking. I do believe in the idea of you just gotta put in effort and do things to find out, right?
Right.
It's like that. It's that one thing where I think it's funny on the internet. It's like the more you do, the more you find out, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
that's exactly what I believe in. Just because of my style of, like I told you, the way that my brain is wired, um, I don't really take people's word for things, right?
Mm,
I always believe in is like it's like um, you would verify, like check and verify, check and verify. You hear it, check and verify. And how I do my check and verify is I do it myself,
right.
right? And then that's how I know if it's true or not. So that's always been very much the way I do it. And then when it comes to me wanting to teach or mentor, it's not me wanting to, let's say, change a certain group of people to have the same idea as me, or train them to have that. I feel like there really is no teacher and there's no student. It's
Mm,
everybody's always both. The student can also is also a teacher at the same time. The teacher is also a student at the same time. So, I'm learning a lot of things when I step into that role of mentoring someone, because I don't know. I feel like there's so many things I still haven't even known that's out there that I've learned from all these experiences. So that's why I continue to take part in that, and I love to see the outcome. Like sometimes I see some of the mentees finally be able to hit some of the goals that they want, finally getting their internship offers and things like that, and them messaging me. Like I had one of my most favorite moments was, I think it was like a year ago. I was at a
yeah.
card show, where I was looking at trading cards, And out of nowhere, out of a really big crowd, someone yelled out my name. And I looked back, I was like, do I know you? He's like, Peter, you may not, but my name's Antoine. I just want to reintroduce myself. And I was like, oh, hey, Antoine. I was like, I went to your, it was, so it's called May at Mac, which is a event, a 1 day event that McMaster University would host to show all of the high school students that got offers what the university is about. So there's 1 year where I was invited to represent the commerce program and to talk about my entire experience. And Antoine was apparently one of the audience there as a high school student. And he told me, Peter, I saw exactly what you presented that day, and I really liked that I could possibly be just like you, or do all these different things. And so I decided to choose to take the offer to go to McMaster. And
Wow.
he's like, guess what? In a couple months this summer, I will actually also be joining Deloitte as an intern.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like to see that full circle almost in a way for that, for Antoine to work out in that couple of years that, I wasn't there to sell a lie or anything. I literally just sold, my own experience, right? If you trust in yourself, you also apply a similar metaphor method to it, you can get to similar, even better, right? So much better than what I've done. I'm just there to show you that it's possible. But yeah, to see that actually happen in front of my eyes within like a year or two was insane. And that's what continued to give me that energy to play those, to step into those roles, right? I guess speak quite a lot here and there at different universities or different organizations. uh, but yeah, it's because of things like what has Anton has shown me that just continues to make me know that it's all worth it. And I'm making that difference, right? I'm learning from people like himself. There's so many experiences that I could tell you that are very similar, that I'm so grateful to have been able to do in my lifetime, right? And so I continue to take part in those. Like I said, I'm learning on how I could be even better, or on different areas I have no knowledge in. So yeah, things like that has just, I felt like, given me a lot of success in this area of like you were talking about, like maybe like the guidance, the teaching, and the teacher and student part. So I'm happy to always tell a little bit more of those, but that's just like a little snippet of some of the things that I continue to cherish. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. There is something to, I actually did the May at Mac thing too last year. They had asked me to come for talk about the study abroad program. And so, you got a bunch of high school students, and you're giving this speech about literally just talking about your experience and how great it was, or the things that you had to go through. And it's so, you look at the crowd, and you watch them, and you can see, like, as you tell your story, some of them, sometimes you see their eyebrows go up, their eyes open, and it's not even like it's not necessarily, maybe it is something you did, but it's like something about the story that you've just told and the experience that you've just gone through has resonated with them, and you can see it happen in front of your eyes. And there's something
Yeah.
that's so, I find so great about that.
Yeah.
And I agree, it's very, like, it's kind of it's inspiring, and you get to see that influence, and you get to see, you kind of said you like to check and see if the things that you believe in, the things that you do work. And well, you kind of get the check right there. You get to
Yeah.
see that, it resonates, and you're not alone in that.
Exactly. So I don't think like I knew it was gonna work or anything. I know it worked for me because that's why I'm there talking a little bit about my experience, and I'm happy with the outcome of it. But to know that there's people that came up to me and told me about that whole experience, now I know that the path that I have built, you know, I could continue to leverage that and keep spreading and building on top of it, right? So again, it's the same as like I don't really, I'm going to tell you 100% to this day that nothing that I've done know that is like I have any guarantee that I know it worked. But I want to continue to step into these roles to be a student at the same time, while I'm a teacher, and build, right, and also see if people can take advantage of the things that I have learned, and continue to enforce my approach to see if it's correct, right? So it's like a continuous loop that feeds each other.
Right, right. Yeah, no, it's definitely, you know, I guess one way to describe that is that you've stored this experience somewhere. It's something that you can not necessarily hold on to, but that you can, like you said, pass on and share. And it's funny because one of the let's say philosophical or literature interpretations of stories in general is just it's like a storehouse of value. It's a story, they say, is like a pattern of behavior that you can follow and you can see and you can track the progression towards you know a a direction of value, let's say. And that's what you've done. Um and well, I'm curious about, while we're talking about this topic of storehouses of value, you mentioned it, and so it's the perfect time to go into it. And maybe it's a bit more of a playful type of conversation now, but the playing cards. Tell me, like, what's up with the playing cards?
Are you talking about
Like the baseball cards, Pokemon cards. What?
yeah.
Yeah, why the interest in that? What's up with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, again, it was just my disconnect from anything that's non-material.
Right.
Just because I hated things online, I hated virtual, I hated all of those things, and I love having something in my hand so I can play around with it, learn about it, right? And it just so happens that there's cards of all these different areas, like trading cards for sports, trading cards for games like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And there's so many like variety of that. And the first time I picked up something like, let's say, a hockey card, I didn't even know that I would be interested in it. But you flip it over, right? You get to learn a little bit about the players, where they're from, where their story is. They have a little blurb. Some of them are like their rookie cards, their first year, with a little sign on. I'm like, wow, this is cool. In a way, you feel like you're holding a little piece of item that actually has some meaning or history to it, right? Because it's their first rookie card or their first card that they did X and X. Stuff like that just really got me. And I think, yeah, that's the part that it's like the learning part. It's the part that also worked with the way that my brain's wired, just having something physical, right? To continue to hold on to it and understand, learn something out of that, and then also be able to share it, right? Share that experience with someone else. As I mentioned, I love the part where when I achieve something, the main part is not the reward of me. Let's say, oh, I gone to like a certain level in my career and I get paid X and X. That's not really what I enjoyed. I enjoyed the part where I can share with people that's been along with my journey, and show that, hey, this is all what was all worth it. Like we believed in each other. That's like seeing the smile, like even going back to my grandparents, like their smile on their face. I think that's the part that I always enjoy, just the sharing aspect of it. So cards has given me that a lot, and it's another side hobby of mine that I continue to put a lot of time and effort, just because I love it. The community that's I have built there. Every time I go to a card show, I know so many people that have become friends that I would buy from them and whatnot. So stuff like that, I just continue to build another aspect of who I am, and where I can continue to really display some of the values I always held very close to my heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there like a certain, like, oh, only hockey cards, only sports cards, or what do you prefer? What do you like to collect?
Yeah, I collect a whole variety. I always love sports more than anything, just
Mm,
because it ties into me playing sports, and I always wish one day I would be big enough that they will make a card of myself, right? Something like that.
yeah,
You
yeah.
just want it's like
That would
same
be
as
cool.
me trying to be be on the main stage. When you get a card, it shows like, wow, like I made it to the big leagues, right?
Right.
It's like stuff like that. But yeah, I love sports just because they also have pieces of, let's say, game used memorabilia that they'll put in it. So you're really holding like a piece of history, right? Some of them are signed by the players, right? So it's very special where I feel like if you have met the player, if you have a certain story with the player, like that piece just really connects with you, right? You just hold it, it's yours, like it's part of it. So that's where I've always put my most amount of time and money into. But of course, Pokemon has always been also a childhood of mine. So I have a vast collection of that. And back then, people used to laugh at me for still collecting these things, even though I'm an adult. But I think now with how the market has changed and how valuable they are, people have just all of a sudden turned and like, wow, how did you know? Like, all of a
Yeah,
sudden
yeah.
you're like treated like a genius.
Genius. Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I'm not. I literally just continue to, believe in what I like, my own values. It's same again, it ties in with everything we just spoken today. That's just what I enjoy, right? So I put time and money into it just because I get so much more value out of that. So that's the part that I think, from my hobbies, it just continues to exemplify exactly the type of person I am. Yeah.
Right. That's so cool. You know, it's like you had, I mean, we kind of mentioned it before, but you had the faith in your authenticity and and if you just lean into that, it turned out to be something that grew and expanded. And seems like everybody likes Pokemon cards now for some reason, right?
Yeah.
I guess part of the reason is some people are, it's more on the economic side. People are, buying and selling. Are you into that as well, or is it more just collecting?
Yeah, I built my whole collection on the cards I like. So now that it's
Yeah,
worth so much money, I'm like, wow, I could use some of that money for my other stuff like investments. But it's been so hard for me to pick out one that I want to sell, right?
yeah,
Even though like I literally bought it for next to nothing and I could sell it for any price and make money on it. To me, it's not really that. It's just like the attachment that I had. And, when the reason I bought it is because I like it, right? There's a story behind why I wanted it. There's a story of how I acquired it and everything. So it's been so hard for me to find something to sell these days to even be part of that like buy and sell culture.
yeah,
Yeah, it's been hard for me to pick out anything. It really feels like you're twisting my arm to just get one thing for me to
yeah,
sell.
yeah,
Yeah, I really hope the hobby stays and it's not like a fad where just like, it pops and this and that. Because I just really want to enjoy it over time, right? And not worry about the money aspect. But it's definitely getting to a point where I feel like there's some stuff that has gone so high that I probably should sell in a way that at least be able to, make sure that the hobby funds itself, and I can still focus on what is the main picture. So there's a lot of things that goes on in between my head right now that I'm conflicted, but hopefully, yeah,
yeah,
like I'll figure that part out a little bit. It's a good problem to have. That's what I
yeah,
keep
yeah.
telling myself.
Sounds like
Yeah,
a very fun one.
yeah.
How long do you think, you said, you're worried that maybe the bubble will pop? Well, I guess the first thing is, do you think it is a bubble, and how long do you think it'll last for?
Honestly, it really shouldn't be a bubble. It's only a bubble because it's overhyped to a point, by all the people that have come in that have no like business in this. Like
Oh
they
yeah,
only in it for the money, and then they will hype up anything to jack numbers up so they can make sales, right? But
yeah,
that's what causes that bubble in a way. I feel like, um, a lot of people are going to lose a lot of the money because they're following people that apparently knows what they're doing, but it's literally the blind leading the blind. But for someone that like myself, I've been collecting for like 15 plus years, I'm like, some of these cards should not be worth this money. And that's why
yeah,
you start to like think, is this really a bubble now? Like, but if I have it, I might as well, try to get rid of those. So then at least I can capture some gain where, like I said, the hobby pays for itself. But it sucks. Like I said, it's people that have no business in this hobby that's leading the direction of it, and I hate that part. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. How I'm not too familiar with like the market of it. How far do you like? I've heard that story about, uh who is it? Logan Paul buys a Charizard card for like millions or something. But
Yeah.
like, how how common is something like that, like a card getting, that high in valuation?
Like there is a lot of cards that's gone up so much in Pokemon and even in the sports industry, sports
Yeah.
cards. But you don't generally see cards trading at that amount all the time. This is
Okay.
what I mean by like people that are just literally jacking up these numbers to create all the buzz and attention. And then, there people will always compare, right? Like, oh, if this card sold for that much, there's probably another comparable that should also be at a certain price now because they're similar. So that's where all the prices start just picking up left and right. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really insane. Like I have an example I can literally show you right now. I have it right next to my desk.
Let's see it.
It's not exactly my card, but it's one that I helped grade for my friend. I really wanted to get it way back. It was like $100, and I still felt like it was too much. But
Mm.
now, because of all these hype, even like a not even the perfect copy of it, like a perfect grade, goes for like $1,000, which is insane. And this is probably one that a lot of people have seen, the Van Gogh Pikachu.
Okay.
And this card, I was like, wow, even at $100, I felt like it was too much. All right, I was like, I'm gonna wait
Yeah.
for the market to come down. I was like a true collector at the time. I was like, usually promotional cards are handed out in vast quantities. They don't generally hold like value like to $1,000 like in like a year or two. So
Yeah.
that's why I was like, I'm just gonna wait out, buy it at a more sensible time. But with the whole Logan Paul things, these cards are promotional has just gone up and up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like this is what I mean, right? In terms of the market being led by people who have no business in this. Yeah,
Yeah. Are they do they just keep making more and more, or is there like limited quantity of everything?
that's the thing. We actually have no idea in terms
Oh,
of
really?
how the Pokemon company does things. Sometimes they could be like, "Oh, we have more now, so we're gonna hand them out again,"
Oh,
right?
okay.
Sometimes they're like, "Oh, we're done, so that's whatever we gave out is that's it," right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's could be all over the place, but we generally know like for promotional items that is for like a big event, they have a lot of it. And if you look at like the graded population of that card, there's like probably like tens of thousands of that same
Grading.
card
What's
graded.
this grading? What's this grading that you're talking about?
It's like there's a grading company called like PSA or other companies, and they'll show you what's the population of the that card like that's been
Oh,
graded.
okay.
So even if you look at that amount, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of this card, like Van Gogh Pikachu. It should not even touch the boundaries of like $1,000 plus card, right?
Right.
Like usually it's rare because maybe there's only like 100 in the world at this grade, right? But
Mm.
this card has literally like tens of thousands. So I'm
Wow.
like, I
Holy.
don't know about this one. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So
great
it's
looking card. I gotta
yeah.
give it to that. Yeah.
Wow. It's like, I mean, can you even predict it? It seems quite random. You're just like, you just go for it, and whatever the
Yep.
market says, you hope that it's not a, I mean, not a pump and dump.
Yep. Yep. But that's the
Oh,
problem.
that's
Like with I think Pokemon gaming cards like Yu-Gi-Oh, because there really is no like limited quantity that they usually say. They just give them out.
yeah.
Um, but if you do sports, sports cards are limited a lot of times. They will say
Oh,
on the
okay.
card number like 51 of like 100. So
Yeah.
like what the amount is. And I feel like those are actually more rare than like let's say some of these gaming cards like TCG Pokemon cards. But yet cars that are like let's say like one of like 10 doesn't even go anywhere close to like $1,000 sometimes, right? I get it, some player aren't as good, but even if you have a star player like one of five for that card, there's only five copies of it, it doesn't
Yeah.
even get anywhere close to like that Pikachu. So
Right.
that's why the market and the economics of cards is so interesting to see, right? There's a lot of manipulators, a lot of speculators, a lot of this and every it's just everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it's like, did the Pokemon company themselves, or whoever's making the hockey cards, the sports cards, do you think they're just like making a profit and just, oh, let's sell this, or is there some, they're just doing it for the people, there's some merit to it?
It's the business is so much about money now that there is no for the collectors. None.
Okay. Nothing.
No.
Wow.
Like in my opinion, none. Like Pokemon maybe is doing a little bit to help the collectors here and there, but they're straight up just printing money. They know that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I feel like they're feeding into it, and you see it sometimes because they'll find older stocks, or apparently they hold back inventory. Where, like, sometimes they sell plushies, they sell like cups. Those things don't
right.
sell on their site. So what they do is they combine it as like a bundle where they sell it at the
Mm,
reseller like price, but yet you get extra stuff. So they call it like where it's not reselling like resale price. But in my opinion, like, wow, this is, you're literally also cashing into this, right?
yeah,
Like, it's the same with sports cars. It's a gambling thing now. It's not for the collectors. You just
right.
keep opening until you get it. But a lot of times from what we hear is that certain people might get the best hits because they have connection, because they're like they have a name to themselves. So like those companies will send the specific box that contains those to those people only.
Oh,
And
really?
that's some
It's
of the
like
controversies out there. Yeah.
usually the cards are like mystery boxes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
should be. It should be.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. Wow,
But
that
of course,
is.
like I said, when so much money is involved, there is no fun part anymore. There's no collectors. There is no hobby out of this. It's just a
Yeah,
business. Yeah.
yeah. No, it gets. I don't know, corruptible. You could say. I don't know if that's the. Yeah, it's always. I don't know. It's always such an interesting thing. I think.
Yeah.
I think just in general, I'm always interested in. You know, I guess one way to describe it is how will you store the work that comprises most of your life. In one way is like these hobbies, and it could be mentorship, but yeah, I think the trading cards and the collecting is always so interesting, especially when money gets involved, and it's like, oh, is this even like collecting anymore, or is it just
Yeah.
profiteering? But no, that's really cool, and it's nice to see that you've got something on the side. Maybe it's an outlet. Does it feel like it's an outlet, or what does it do for you having this
That's how
hobby?
I've always treated. But like I said, for the longest time, everybody around me, even my family, they would not have it. Like, it's like,
Oh,
this is
really?
not where you should be putting your time or money or anything. And I will hear the most biggest flack from everybody, right? So even to this day, like, they know it's worth money, but they will still say the same thing. They
Oh,
just don't.
really? Even like you show them like, look at this card, like
Yeah,
look at me now, and they still don't
they
like
don't
it.
care. They're like, just, okay,
Mm.
show me the money instead. Don't show me the
Yeah,
card, right?
yeah, yeah,
I get it. They're old school, but I use it, like I said, as an avenue for me to enjoy, just time away from everything else, right? But um, it's hard because at the end of the day, sometimes everybody around you is still um, not always supportive of that, just because they don't share the same vision. Yeah, so it's something that I'm still trying to find a right balance to how I want to take this as well. I agree. I shouldn't be putting like too much money into this or time. It's really should be like a something that doesn't take too much out of me, right? But the amount of money that it's worth, now that things have like gone so much, like, have gone up so much, I feel like I need to make a right choice, to see if I can capitalize a little bit out of it, where I'm not, paying out of my own pocket for a hobby. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's really cool. Well, thank you very much, Peter. This has been such a broad and interesting conversation. From learning about yourself and your experience in Deloitte, and even diving into, I know maybe it's less familiar grounds, but the more psychological side of meaning, I think that's always a very interesting thing to talk about. And obviously AI, it's a you know booming discussion these days, and so it's nice to hear a bit about that and how you're interacting with it, and the trading card stuff as well is always a fun conversation to have. So yeah, thank you for sharing what you've learned with us, and for everyone watching and listening, thank you very much for your time and attention.